Hello and welcome, everybody, and happy Friday to everyone out there. Happy Good Friday for those who celebrate Easter, and have a wonderful weekend for all of you who celebrate Easter. My name is Daniel Olexa. I am the founder of Transcendent Living, helping others live better than the normal. That you all are very powerful individuals, and you can live beyond what other people say is normal or what other people say you should be living as. That's not what you're here to do. You're here to live your authentic life in your power. And it's helpful to remember just how powerful you are when we get out of the assumptions, which is our focus today, of who we think we are, who we've learned to be. But for today's topic of assumptions, what assumptions do you bring to communication, into conversation? Sometimes you know what they are, and many other times you don't know that it's things could be potentially biases, which can be good or bad. Let's make that clear. Biases get a bad rap out in the world right now, but biases can be good as well, particularly if we are in a healthy, committed relationship. I certainly hope that you are biased toward your partner being the best person for you in your life. That is a bias. So, thinking about assumptions, what assumptions do you bring, particularly those unconsciously, into any conversation that you're not aware of yet? It might seem like a bit of a theoretical conversation, but let's bring it to something very real and actual. I'm going to hold up a quarter here, US quarter, and I'd like you to think about, what do you know about this quarter? You've probably experienced thousands of these, potentially tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of them in your life. Pocket change, laundry, pinball machines, video games, all of that stuff from my misspent youth. What do you know about this quarter? When I used to do this exercise, or when I do it as part of training exercises in corporate trainings, I'll get answers like it's silver. I have to ask, silver the color or silver the elemental metal, because it could be two different things. Yes, it is silver in color, but if you see that little, it's hard to see here, but that little bit of a coppery edge, it is no longer silver the elemental metal. That stopped in 1964 in American coinage. From that point forward, they've been made of an amalgam, which is why we see that nice little copperish tone on the edge of our silver coinage. What else do you know about it? There's the obvious things like it's round, it has a rough edge. All those things are observational. You know it by seeing it. My question to you, what am I seeing? Based on your experiences, what's on my side of the quarter over here? Take a moment and ask yourself, maybe make a note here. What do you think, what do you think I'm experiencing? Maybe you've written down Washington's head. Maybe you've written down In God We Trust. Maybe you've written down a date, because the date would be on that side of the quarter. Notice I said would be, not that it is. Because while you have experienced many thousands of these objects in life, you've never experienced this one. I'll spin that again and take a little bit of the shine off of it. It is a two-tailed quarter. Let's back up from that exercise for a second. You've seen many of them, but you've never seen that one. What assumptions did you bring based on all the prior experiences to your experience of this singular item that is different from anything you've seen before? How are you doing that in life? How are you doing it in conversations with those around you? Hearing their situations, hearing about situations at work, in the family, friendships, relationships, all of it. Bringing your past experiences to this moment, making assumptions that you know what's going on. Probably it's not. And that's where we need to check our assumptions at the door. To think about where maybe might some of those assumptions come from. Well, obviously they come from past experiences. That's kind of obvious. Maybe they come from reinforcing and having the opportunity to guess right many times over. How did you guess right? Because the person who came to you asking for advice already pre-selected you for the advice you were going to give them. We did that in an earlier episode of these shows. They already knew what you were going to tell them. So of course you were going to guess right. You had a 100% chance of winning that game, even though you didn't know you were playing one. Now that you know you don't know, how can you come to the next conversation differently to build communication and collaboration? What don't you know in any given situation that is presented to you in any moment in time? We get really attached to having to know everything, thinking that our advice is our value, our knowledge base is our value, that our only way of showing up in the world to prove that we are worth something is being able to tell somebody what to do and how to live their life. That is the antithesis of what I do as a coach. My job is to help the individual in front of me figure it out for themselves and discover what assumptions they've been bringing to their life in who they are, what they're allowed to do, what they are deserving of. That is all an internal story based on assumptions from prior experiences. We break those down. Now there's an opportunity to create a new narrative, a new story of life that builds out even bigger toward most likely the ideal, fully satisfied, fully authentic life that the individual is really looking to live. So we think, let's take another second here, thinking about assumptions, how they've been showing up in your world that maybe you didn't even know. Awareness is the first level of change. Now that you know that there have been situations up until this moment where you have been making assumptions and bringing them into conversations that could be from any number of presenting things in the environment. What can you do now to give yourself a moment to check back before you give direction to somebody to go in a certain pathway, make a certain choice that you think is right for them? Maybe they're even begging for you to give them that. How well do you know them? How well do you know what's right for them? You know what's right for you, or do you? How can you know what's right for another human being? There's only one person in charge of their life, and it's not you, it's them. Help them choose autonomy. Move into curiosity away from assumption. If you find here's some tools to move away from assumption. If you find yourself about to tell, take a breath and check back. Ask yourself, what's the intention for me to offering this piece of advice? Or where is this really coming from in my experience? Then maybe turn it into a question. Or even more powerful, ask yourself rather than telling yourself that I know what's going on here, maybe the shift is to turn it into a question and ask yourself, what don't I know here? Because I don't know. I'm going to guess with a fairly reasonable level of assumption. Hey, I go through it too. That you don't want to give bad advice to people. You don't want to give them bad directions. So you're not going into this to be malicious, but we are going in with a little bit of potential ignorance in the real definition of ignorance, which is not knowing, not the other definition of ignorance, which is knowing better and doing the wrong thing anyway. We're not looking at that. It's the not knowing. What don't you know? And in that, what gaps in that not knowing is your assumption filling in to make you feel like you have something to offer, to create that sense of I'm of value because I can give direction. The best value you can give to another human being is your presence, your curiosity to help them open up and learn and give them the space to express rather than going into a telling. And that is my offering here for you today on this beautiful Friday afternoon. As you go into the weekend, take some time to sit with this and maybe ask yourself, what can you do differently next week or in your next conversation coming up, whether it might even be over the weekend with family? How can you come into your next conversation differently, knowing you do not know everything that's present? If you'd like to have a longer conversation with me, feel free to reach out at daniel@transcendentliving.com. We'll schedule a time to have a chat and see how I may be of service to you in helping to build your fully authentic life that you are able to rise above what everybody else says is normal and live your happiness. Thank you. See ya. Be well.